Right now, thank you. Thank you, folks. It's now 5:02, so thank you for joining us tonight in Mount Beauty for our regular monthly council meeting on the 26th of April, and it is a Wednesday night that you've all realised, so thanks for getting here. All right, recording and live streaming of council meetings. Thank you, the CEO.
All council meetings are filmed with both video and audio being recorded. Video is focused on a specific area, however audio from the entire room is captured. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. By submitting a question, you consent to your question being read aloud at the meeting. The reasoning behind recording council meetings is to hold us more accountable and to improve the transparency of council's decision making to our community. The full meeting is recorded on council's YouTube channel, which is Alpine Shire Council, and it will be available on the YouTube channel after this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Look, could everybody stand, please, and I'll just do the acknowledgement to traditional custodians. Alpine Shire Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are meeting today. Council also acknowledges all of the traditional custodians of the wider lands of the area known as the Alpine Shire. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community and strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all. Thank you. Be seated. Confirmation of minutes from our meeting on the 28th of March. Recommended that the minutes as circulated be confirmed. Do I have a mover, seconder, please?
Move those.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas.
You're happy to second.
I caught Councillor Janice's eye. Those in favour? Thank you. That is carried. Apologies tonight. We have Councillor Primer's apology and Councillor Hughes is also an apology tonight. And this is a difficult table, folks, because the peripheral vision is not good to see who's putting their hands up, okay? Yeah. Anyway, we'll get by. Obituaries and congratulations, and I'll start from Councillor Janice. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to mention the Anzac Day marches yesterday through all our main communities, Mount Beauty, Bright and Myrtleford, and give my thanks to all those people who made the effort to attend the dawn services. I think we had record crowds in all the towns and participation, and particularly the young people. And I particularly want to thank those people who organised those events, because there's a lot of work has gone into that for the benefit of the community. So thank you and congratulations to those. And that's all I have this evening.
Thank you very much. Councillor Keeble.
I just wanted to, sorry, I'm getting my bearings here. It's been a long day since I left Hobart this morning. Carol Johnson passed away. Just want to recognise her. She had a long battle and passed away recently. And there was a community gathering. I just want to pay my respects
Excellent.
to Greg and the family and the boys.
Thank you.
My apologies.
Councillor Nicholas.
Sorry, just signalling.
Sorry.
Got a number of things. I wanted to concur with Councillor Janice about the Anzac Day marches and gatherings. The one I went to in Bright was really interesting and focused on nurses in war. I also wanted to congratulate the organisers of the Wandi Nut Festival. In particular, they notified local residents of what was happening, road closures, times of noise and etc. So it was a really well organised event. And as a resident, I didn't feel imposed upon, which I have in the past. I also wanted to congratulate the people who were involved with Tony's Trek. It was in the Ovens Valley. Tony Pearce, who's the chair of the Emergency Services Foundation and works towards supporting mental health of emergency service workers, has been doing a really long walk through Victoria, and he came from East Gippsland over the Alps and through Brighton up the Ovens Valley as part of that walk. He invited people to walk with him along the way, and some young people who are involved with the Alpine Shire walked with him, and we're pushing or talking to him about resilient alpine youth and how to bring youth and emergency service people together. And some councillors also were involved and talked with Tony. But one of the main reasons I brought it up is not just to congratulate Tony Pierce for doing the walk, but it is a fundraising opportunity for the Emergency Services Foundation. So if you'd like to look that up and see what they're achieving, that would be great. My final thing is to congratulate our staff for jumping when they could and accepting some funding to put in a EV charging station in Bright. And I know there are some people who are opposed to having the EV charging where it is because it uses car parking and etc. But it's fabulous to see that there's a start towards the future, and I feel like we're really entering the 21st century. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, good coverage of topics. I thought I'd just build on what Councillor Nicholas mentioned on the Anzac Day ceremony in Bright. So Prue Cox is she's the secretary of the Returned Nurses RSL sub-branch at Anzac House there in Melbourne, and it was really quite a memorable day to focus on nurses and their service in our armed services and the conflicts and the things they endured. There was a catchphrase many times over when she was reflecting on the things they did about, and the nurses coped with this. And the number of times that was highlighted in terms of they had to put up with difficult conditions. Often they didn't get the kind of conditions that the service folk got, but they coped with those and performed. So really great to have Prue Cox come and chat. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just reiterate as well, because I was here in Mount Beauty yesterday for the Anzac Day, and we had a captain from Latchford Barracks in the nurses battalion. She was excellent, and one of her cohorts, who is a nurse, but she actually fainted, or very nearly fainted in the middle of the procedures. She wasn't wiggling her toes enough, because it was quite warm out there, and they were standing to attention for quite some time. The other thing about that is in Myrtleford there was the bust of a nurse from the Second World War unveiled yesterday as well. So it seemed to be the flavour this particular Anzac Day, which I thought was good. I'd also like to congratulate Major Roads Projects Victoria for actually getting the road open on Monday. They said Anzac Day, and that was 6 to 8 weeks ago. They said that, and I thought, let's see if they can do it, because when we first had this road closure, it was only going to be maybe 6 weeks. So I think it's excellent. I actually took the opportunity to drive up through it yesterday. It is still scary driving past it, believe me, because it is like a big cliff of dirt that's likely to come down at any time. And the only other congratulations is for all of those people around the community that managed to survive Easter and look after all of our visitors. Right, declarations by councillors or executives of any conflict of interest. Thank you. Ms Habercroft does have a conflict in one of the items tonight. Public questions. Questions on notice limited to 2 questions per person. I think you're all very familiar with how we do our questions on notice. I have 4 questions on notice tonight, and then I will be inviting questions from the floor as well. Limited to 2 questions. Try and keep them concise if you can, please. Right, question number 1 is regarding something that is actually on the agenda tonight, which it'll be covered more fully, I believe, in the agenda item, the first agenda item. It's to do with Ashwood Avenue. I have a question for the upcoming council meeting. What is the nature of agenda item 2931 Ashwood Avenue, planning application? Please consider this a question on notice to be asked at the meeting. What is being discussed? People who made a submission and attended the last council meeting were under the impression the vote went against this development. I haven't heard anything since, and I'm looking for further information, please. Mostly clarification on the intention of this agenda item and what happens next. I think the CEO has a brief response which will be covered as I said, more fully in item number 1 of our general meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this application is being presented to Council again due to a procedural failing at the last Council meeting. So at the last Council meeting, the motion was put to the vote, was to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit. This motion failed, and in the absence of an alternative motion being put and voted on, there was effectively no decision. So Council voted against the decision that was put to them, the recommendation of the officer, but failed to put forward an alternate motion which was then voted on, so in effect no decision was made at the Council meeting. So if it was Council's intention to refuse the application, a subsequent motion giving notice of refusal and the grounds for refusal was required to be made and put to the vote at the last meeting. This is implicit in the provisions of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and the Regulations 2015, which require a responsible authority to give notice of its refusal and the grounds for that refusal. So the application is being presented to Council again this evening for a decision to be made.
Thank you. Question 2, Gateway Soil. Have the developers of Bright Valley produced any recent soil tests conducted on the property to date? We realise there is the ability to perform a desktop assessment, but wanting to follow up if actual soil testing has been conducted. Thank you, Ms Abercroft.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The applicant has undertaken due diligence for the land, including their own assessment of the health of the soil. Council has received a copy of the report titled Preliminary Site Investigation and Desktop Hydrogeological Assessment prepared by EHS Support. Council intends to release a redacted version of this report in the interest of transparency. Council's statutory planning team is yet to review this document and has not determined that it satisfies the request for further information. Council will seek independent peer review or advice on the report and their soil results provided in order to satisfy themselves that any proposed use of the land is appropriate.
Thank you, Ms Abercroft. Question 3. As I stipulated earlier, questions should be concise. Some background material is sometimes required. Oh, thank you. In this instance, a lot of the background material is actually in this report here, which is the Reading Alpine Planning Scheme Review, which is a statutory review that has just been completed, one that has to be completed by each council every 4 years. Ours was a little bit out of date when this one was actually produced. However, the question here, and I'll read it in a minute, relates to some of the things that are in the executive summary. Now, I'll just point out that the executive summary, I'll point out that this is actually a planning scheme review. It is a subjective review. It is something that is required, and we're just going to be passing it on. Then from this, there are recommendations. Some of those recommendations will be carried or taken up by council, which will then go into a planning amendment at some future point in time. So not all the recommendations may necessarily get up. As pointed out in this review from the last review, some of the recommendations from that review were not taken up by council and are these days probably a bit irrelevant. So that's why they haven't been taken up. However, getting back to the question, planning questions. The statutory planning function of council is in crisis, leading to increasingly poor performance against both legislative requirements and community expectations. That's a direct quote from the executive summary of this review. The question on notice, and just parroting the actual excerpt that was taken from this, given that inadequate investment in strategic planning dates back 15 to 20 years, doesn't actually state that, and noting the crisis situation that we now face, how can residents of the Alpine Shire be confident that council is now making informed, coherent and evidence-based planning decisions? I could give an answer to that, but I think someone else has a better worded answer than I'd probably give. Thank you, Ms Abercroft.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From a statutory planning perspective, council's planners must assess planning permit applications against the Alpine Planning Scheme as it exists at the date of the assessment. It is required to do this in accordance with legislation and cannot operate outside the requirements of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 or the Regulations 2015 or the Alpine Planning Scheme. Just for information, in 2020-2021, there was 3 applications to VCAT made by applicants, and 1 of those decisions was overturned.
Thank you, Ms Abercroft. Question 4. back over to the other valley. Gateway, fire safety. I'd like to please know how the Bright Valley development will impact on the entire township of Bright's fire safety. Of particular concern is how the town will be able to evacuate an emergency during summer when the town's population is significantly larger with tourists. Also, please confirm the number of houses to be built in the development at the completion of all stages. That was from Madeline. Again, I think Ms Abercroft.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Any application will be required to respond to the requirements of the Alpine Planning Scheme in relation to bushfire planning and will be referred to the Country Fire Authority for review and comment as part of the planning assessment process. The CFA is a mandatory referral authority for the current application for a planning permit. The CFA considered the application and advised council it does not object to the grant of a permit subject to certain conditions. The second part of the question, the exact numbers of houses within the entire development will be impacted by detailed design choices and planning requirements during the progression of the stages and is not yet exact. Information provided within the development plan that was approved last year indicates the following possible lot yields. If an average lot size is 550 square metres, it's 386 lots. If the average lot size is 650 square metres, it's 327 lots. And if the average lot size is 750 square metres, it's 283 lots. The application under assessment at the moment is a planning permit application for 78 dwellings.
Thank you, Ms Abercroft. I apologise, folks, I forgot a little bit of housekeeping. Could you mind, if you've got phones or whatever, to pop them on silent, please? Right, we're up to questions from the floor. There's a microphone over here, so we can hear you. It is a room that echoes a little bit. Please just state your name, where you're from, and your question.
I'm going to go first.
Certainly.
Glenn Wilson, I'm the Toowoomba South resident and a lessee at the Mount Beauty Airport. And as council will probably know, this is about the airport. I suspected that the reason that council said that the airport upgrade was going to take place, which was to future-proof for emergency service, was a bit of a furphy. So 141 days ago I lodged an FOI application with council. Still hasn't been answered. But one of the interim stages of that was that there was no request by council received from the emergency service for an upgrade. And I've got two letters here that one's from Air Ambulance Victoria and the other one's from Firefighting Management Victoria, and both say that they don't need the upgrade. So council, in its wisdom, spent nearly $4 million on an upgrade, which you continue to say that was to future-proof for emergency services.
Mr Wilson, have you got a question on this?
Yes.
Yep.
There is no evidence of this. What was the real reason for the upgrade? And will council apologise to the ratepayers of Alpine Shire for spending about $4 million on an upgrade that wasn't needed?
It's an interesting question. Can someone answer this question from the executive team or not? Would you like a written response to this one, Mr Wilson?
I'd like council to answer it publicly. Because
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Councillor Janis.
Yep.
I was on council at the time. The funding application came through from the federal government for an opportunity to upgrade our airfield there, and for the purpose of emergency management, emergency aircraft, whatever, to use that facility. And at the time, council made a decision to take advantage of that grant application in good faith to protect our community and our landscape. It was a good application. It was a good deal from the federal government to do that. Yes, we did have to spend some ratepayers' money, but we looked at the long-term strategic advantage of that, and thought that that was a positive decision to do. Clearly, not everybody liked that. We employed, we only had a very short time to get this application in. We employed somebody had some expertise in that area from, not from within Shire, but from a different area. We looked at it and we put the submission in. It came, we got the submission, we decided to build it, and you have what you have there today.
That doesn't answer the question, Councillor Janus. The question was, if emergency services did not request an upgrade, but council says that it was done to future-proof for emergency services.
Well, why should they have to? Does an emergency service know what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years' time when we have a great big fire up on the hill?
Yes, they do, and that was covered in these two letters.
I'm very pleased that they've got such good, clairvoyant minds.
I think they have better emergency services, clairvoyant minds, than Alpine Shire Council does.
That's your opinion, sir?
No, Firefighting Management Victoria say they used it 5 times in the last fire event, and that was with the rotary wing. You don't need 1,800 metres by 18 metres wide.
Sorry, Mr Wilson, is your complaint?
I'm not going to argue with Mr
I asked
Wilson.
a question
Yep.
to say what was the real reason for the upgrade, because it
Because
wasn't
funding
to
was,
future-proof.
I'm assuming because funding was available at the time, and it was funding that had not been available before. I've flown over this airport many years ago and not been able to land because it was in a poor state of condition. So I have a feeling that that was part of the reason for it. And why not have something like that available in this area, which we didn't have before?
Why not have footpaths in Mount Beauty?
They are on the pipeline,
Okay.
definitely.
Clearly you can't answer the question. I've got a second question, and it relates
I don't think
to...
you like the answer that.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I just think the
What?
problem is you don't like
The answer.
that's been
No,
given. Keep
I
going.
think council
I've
has
answered, keep
misled...
going.
Keep going. Next
Council
question.
has misled the public.
Next
Okay.
question.
My second question, and I'm sorry about this.
Well-
So, with the works that were done at the airfield and around the hangars, we had an on-site meeting with the contractors with Alpine Shire on November the 8th, and we were told what was going to happen around the hangars. Now that didn't happen, and I notified Alpine Shire Council on the 19th of January about the defects and the damage that was done to our property at the airfield. The problems have been made worse since then. We can't get a straight answer from your project manager. We can't get a straight answer from the CEO about when these problems will be rectified and the damage made good. Can someone...
We
tell
can
me?
answer that, and
Yep.
that was probably answered today, I think.
Thank you, Mr Wilson. Perhaps I can provide some clarity as to why we're struggling to address the problems around your hangar. The feedback we've had from the consultant, the construction contractor, is that they're struggling to get any of their staff to come out and work around that particular hangar because of the challenging relationship that they've had with you at that hangar. So we are in the process. The contractor is engaging an independent person to now come out. So with respect, you are part of the problem at that airport, Mr Wilson. And that has been an ongoing problem for the last 2 years that I've been working on this project. The way in which you engage with my staff, with our organisation, has been nothing short of totally inappropriate.
When I get lied to,
Yeah.
I react
Yeah.
appropriately, and we have been lied to. Me
Yeah.
and my partner have been lied to by your project manager.
Yeah.
That is on record. That's in the emails.
So I dispute that, and I will again reflect the way in which you've engaged with our team has been a significant contributor to the problems that you're experiencing, Mr Wilson. And it has been for the last 2 years. The way you've engaged with our team has been completely unprofessional and inappropriate.
I think you're the guys that do the unprofessional really well.
I think that's enough.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr Wilson.
Thanks, Mr Wilson. Sorry, do we have anybody else who would like to ask questions? Thank you.
It's an easy one.
I'm sure many of you recently have experienced the situation where driving along a highway you come to 40-kilometre sign, work in progress, and when you get there there's absolutely no work in progress. In some cases there might be some potholes. I wonder if the Shire could please consider encouraging their either contractors or their own workers to make sure they remove their signs when they finish the work. There have been 2 here on the highway where the roadwork was done down Embankment Drive for probably a month now. Someone got so cross over the weekend they threw one into a bush, which is still sitting there. The other one was on the side of the road and somebody set it up again. There's also a situation in the main street where there's been work in progress, and which has had there for ages. It's been repaired, but the sign that says pedestrians please watch your path is still sitting there. So I just wonder if you'd encourage your workers or contractors to make sure they get rid of signage, please.
Thank you, Mary. It's my understanding that 1 or 2 of the officers from the Alpine Shire have ongoing discussions with Vic Roads, and these are usually a Vic Roads issue, and it's not. These aren't isolated issues. There's plenty of them on the roads between, say, Myrtleford and Albury as well, and they sit there.
If
Yeah,
I may,
CEO might say something as well.
Embankment Drive is one of council's, so we will look into that. Thank you.
All right. Just for that clarity, but the ones on the highways, we advocate as well. Yeah, we're advocating for that as well. Any other public questions? Yes, please.
My name's Beth Smith and I'm a Toowoomba South resident. And this is a question about the Toowoomba South public toilets, non-existent. In February, the newspaper article ended in the Observer, yes, with Will being quoted as, "We should have good news within the next couple of weeks." Now that was February the 22nd. We had the forum here and it was on the agenda as being an important thing. I just wondered, had there been any progress with it, and if so, what?
I'll hand over to the CEO for that one. I do remember the forum. It was a long night chatting about toilets, from memory.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for clarity, it wasn't me who was quoted as saying that there'd be good news in 2 weeks. It was the Mayor who was quoted as saying there'd be good news.
Exactly. I was given that information because it looked like it was a very rosy situation at the time.
Council has made an offer to purchase land in Toowoomba South, which, if accepted, would allow us to develop public amenities there. We haven't had a response yet on that offer. We are awaiting that response. At some point, we will have to make a decision whether we're going to get a response, and if not, to make alternative plans. The alternative plan, if our offer is not accepted, or if Council's offer is not accepted, is to develop public amenities within the road reserve in Toowoomba South. So we're awaiting feedback. We don't want to jump the gun because we think being able to secure the land will provide a better long-term outcome for the community of Toowoomba South. However, there is only so long that I think Council should wait, given the urgency that we're hearing from the community. We may need to move on an alternative plan if we don't get either positive confirmation that the offer's been accepted or hear otherwise.
And just on that, Beth, I think that the CEO has probably triggered something here, and that is that we probably should push harder as a council to get a result from our acquisition proposal, and give a timeline, say for instance 2 to 3 weeks. And if that is not acceptable, then we should be pushing very hard, because we've got hopefully another snow season coming up, and that'll get a lot more traffic through there. So we need to get something, I think, put in place.
Thank you. I do have a second question.
Certainly.
Not related to the toilets. The Uniting Church has an op shop here, and we have a skip that we turf stuff that needs to be turfed into. It's currently located on church land, but is quite difficult to access and quite a nuisance to the 3 neighbours who live around that site. I've approached council to see if I could put a skip or relocate the skip to out here, and that request was rejected because it would be unsightly, it would block public parking, and all the rest of the excuses. The skip is only emptied about once a year, so it's not as though the Cleanaway trucks would be coming in. I've approached 4 other businesses in town, and a bit like the Toowoomba South toilet land, I've had no response from any of them. Is there any possibility of council finding me space to put this skip?
Beth, can the council take that one on notice, please?
Sure.
Thank you. But thanks for bringing it to our attention. Any other questions while we're going? We're well under the time that we had last time in Myrtleford.
Am I?
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
The bag on the way past. Sue Hales from 18 Ashford Avenue.
Thanks,
I'm
Sue.
not going to discuss the development down the end today, but I want to know about the exit of Ashford Avenue and the new development takes over on the other side of the road. I know that section 1 or the beginning, stage 1, I believe that's going to start first on that corner. Is there some sort of decision about access out of Ashford Avenue then? Are they considering perhaps a roundabout there, or are they talking at all about how we will access into that road from
Sue,
Ashford Avenue?
can I defer to the CEO or
Preliminary. at
or
this
Mr.
stage,
Rees,
maybe.
please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to respond to that one. So at the moment, there's no firm plan in relation to that intersection. So all we've received from the developer at this stage is a permit application which relates to the 78 lots and the access onto the Great Alpine Road. However, the team, both council's team and the developer, are aware that part of the full development will have an impact on access further down, so where Stacky Gully joins onto the Great Alpine Road. We've been involved in quite a few discussions now with the developer about what their proposal might be for that intersection. I think a key factor is it needs to be approved by Vic Road, so that's a Vic Roads intersection. So to a large degree that will decide what the answer is. But there are ultimately two potential groups of solution. One is a roundabout solution and one is an offset intersection, so where you retain two separate junctions, one for Ashford Avenue and one for Stacky Gully. So both of those options at this stage, as I understand, are still on the table. There's been no firm decisions around either. There are pros and cons for both, and we're weighing up at the moment what presents the best outcome for the community and the residents around there. But yeah, certainly there's no decision, but it's recognised that there's an interface there that needs to be addressed. Yeah.
All right, fabulous, thank you.
Thank you. Certainly.
It's Faye Mason from Alpine FM and the Observer. I would just like to put to you that when the toilet is built, I've had a few people request gender equity toilet because we do have certain people in this community that would make use of that. So if I could just make that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I close this session, any other questions? Thank you. We shall move on to presentations of reports by officers. Item 8.1, the planning application for 2931 Ashwood Avenue, and I believe Ms Havercroft has a conflict for this and she'll leave the room at 5:35. This would normally be presented by Ms Havercroft, so because she has the conflict, the CEO will present this item. Thanks, Mr Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as noted during the response to questions on notice, we're presenting this back to Council tonight due to a procedural failing at the last meeting, so there was no decision taken at the last meeting. The motion that was put to Council was rejected effectively, but there was no alternate motion put up which was accepted, so that resulted in no decision being taken at all. So I'm going to run quickly through the summary that Helen provided at the last meeting. So the proposal is for a 7-lot subdivision with common property and buildings and works for the construction of 6 dwellings. So this is at 29 and 31 Ashwood Avenue, a planning application P2022.31. The land size approximately 6,095 square metres all combined. The permit is required. It's triggered by 3 things. So one is clause 32.08, which is subdivision. Clause 32.08-6 is construction of 2 or more dwellings on a lot. Clause 44.06-2, which is buildings and works and subdivision. Overlay we're dealing with is a bushfire management overlay. There were 9 objections to this planning permit application, which are detailed, and Council's officers' response are detailed in the planning report. So the recommendation from Council officers tonight is...
Mr Mayor.
Yes, certainly.
I'd like to put an alternate motion.
Thank you. You have an alternative motion? Do you have the wording? Or
It's going to come up, I believe, that Council refuses a notice of decision
okay.
to grant a permit, and then there are some, I think it's already written, Mr Rees. Okay, that Council refuses a notice of decision to grant a planning permit, etc.
Yep.
On the following basis, that it doesn't conform to the neighbourhood character requirements.
That's the basic.
Yep, yep.
Yep, the basic.
And doesn't reflect orderly planning.
Okay. The alternate motion, can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Keeble. So we have an alternate motion to the one recommended by council officers, and the Councillor Nicholas, would you like to talk to your alternate motion?
Sure. So, as has already been explained, this planning application came to council last month, and there was a significant discussion about neighbourhood character and the character of Ashwood Avenue that is big blocks and spaced houses and lots of vegetation, and the 6th lot, which would end up with 7 houses on it as a subdivision, and building of 7 houses doesn't fit in with that character. There was also discussion about its building or development like this leapfrogging the development and the density that's starting to happen in Bright. So it's leapfrogging across some quite open areas, and that's how it doesn't reflect orderly planning. And if people want to find out more about it, they could look at last month's discussion.
There was a long discussion. Thank you. Councillor Keeble?
I just can't read that. Thanks. Can we make that? No, just read that out.
The alternative motion that council refuses to grant a planning permit as it does not conform to the planning requirements and does not reflect orderly planning.
All right,
Neighbourhood,
thanks.
I think neighbourhood character should be in that one as well.
Yeah. Thank you. I have no comment.
No further comment. Do we have anybody opposed to this actual motion? Councillor Janus?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Heard my commentary last council meeting at Myrtleford. I'm confused now because the original report in relation to character states, basic from our officers, that neighbourhood character standard in clause 55 is not intended to result in the replication of existing building stock or stock change. Some areas will see significant changes as a result of new social and economic conditions, changing housing preferences and explicit housing policies. Typically, residential growth and change occurs within the general residential zone where there are no restrictive overlays or environmental and servicing constraints. In these areas, it is important that respecting character is not taken too literally, and a new character will emerge in response to those social and economic conditions. I also refer to my further previous comments in relation to the holiday flats across the road at the end of Ashwood Avenue. That also, if you look on the mapping and take a little bit of a drive around, the number of small lots across the road in Stacky Gully Road, at the end of Ashwood Avenue in Cavalieri Place subdivision there, where there are many small lots. The road is sufficiently wide enough to take any emergency vehicle and other vehicles there. The subdivision has been well planned out. There's only 26% of that 6,000 square metres that is going to be taken up in building space. The rest will be gardens, etc. So I maintain my original commentary on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Councillor Kelly, you haven't had a word in yet. Would you like to have a word on this?
Sure thing, Mayor. I guess what I reflected on last time still stands for me, in that even if other elements are satisfied, we have a neighbourhood there that is at best a single lane road. You know, there is no room to modify that. It's part of the character of the tree landscape there, and I think those barriers remain. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholas, any further comment before I put it to the vote?
Yep, I just wanted to respond to the neighbourhood character and that it's not supposed to stop change. I understand that, but I think step change is really significant in the area we're talking about, and that gradual change is a far more acceptable process.
Okay. Any other comment?
No.
I shall put this to the vote. Those in favour of the alternative motion to refuse the planning permit? Those against? It's been carried.
Division.
Division. Those in favour? Councillor Kelly, Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Keeble. Those against? Councillors Jadis and Councillor Forsyth. Thank you. Could we ask Director Havercroft to come back in, please? Sergeant at Arms, thank you.
Thank you.
Noted that Director Havercroft rejoined the meeting at 5:43. Moving on to 8.2.1, Dinner Plane TV service. Director of Assets, Mr. Rees. Fine.
Thank you. Thank you.
Item 8.2.1, Mr. Rees.
Okay, then, Mr. Mayor. So, this report relates to the Dinner Plane television, cable television service. By way of background, Council provides and maintains the cable television infrastructure to parts of Dinner Plane. Over the last few years, the number of breakdowns and customer complaints has risen. This has been due to the ageing infrastructure and an increasing susceptibility to weather. In terms of some of the detailed issues, the hardware is no longer available through the supplier network, and any supply of hardware has already incurred a 300% increase. The infrastructure is failing in the underground cables, which are cracked when making it very difficult to detect faults and rectify them. There's some data showing the increase in customer complaints from 2021 when we had 14, 2022, 22, and this year to date, before the season starts, we already have 15. This is also an inequitable service, and what this means is that the cable television service is not accessible to all properties in Dinner Plane. We have done some research, and there are two alternatives available, one of them being a mobile NBN connection via Telstra, and the second being a vast television satellite connection. A combination of these are available to all properties, and just to confirm that the capacity of the NBN connection has been designed with excess bandwidth to accommodate additional demand, and this bandwidth can also be upgraded as need be by the service provider. There are obviously a couple of risks associated with discontinuing a service like this, or recommending to do so. One of them is reputation, and we're already experiencing a situation where Council's ability to deliver a good customer service is being impacted. and we've proposed to mitigate this by providing adequate notice to enable transition to an alternative private television service provider and their products, and also to implement a comprehensive communication program to raise awareness and educate the community on the viable new technology options. As noted, the risk of ongoing poor customer experience is almost certain, and again, we propose to mitigate this by decommissioning the service and providing adequate time and notice for the community to make that transition. Consultation is already commenced in terms of an informed communication program to advise the community and provide that adequate notice for them to be able to make that transition. And what that means is that Council will continue to maintain the Dinnerplain cable television service till the end of this season, which will be the end of September 2023, and at which time we will then commence the decommissioning of the service, providing 5 months of notice for residents to make alternative arrangements.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Keeble.
Second.
Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks. The Dinnerplain cable television has certainly provided a service over the years. It's come to its end of life. I'm sure ex-councillor Mark Stevens might turn in his bed, but I think even he would say it's probably come to its end of its useful life. It has served a purpose, and there are other avenues at the moment as well.
Councillor Nicholas.
Just to add to what Councillor Keeble has already said, and it is mentioned in the report, the cable TV doesn't service the entirety of Dinnerplain anyway, so I think this is a much fairer approach, and given that the cable TV needs so much to make it work.
Okay, good. Any other councillors have comment? Certainly, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, just a couple of questions. Customer complaints suggest to me that there's a reliance on this service. I was just keen to understand, do we have a sense of how many are still reliant on this service? And I guess the second part to that is maintaining to an expiry period. Does maintain mean repair on those complaints? And also, when we get to the expiry period, does it the switch flick off, or does it we just leave it to degrade? What plays out there?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. I cannot, I've taken on notice in terms of how many residents are relying on that service, but we do know that a significant number already use an NBN or VAST connection to have access to their television service. The decommissioning process would only be commenced at the end of the season, and we would plan to decommission the above ground infrastructure only, leaving the cables intact underground.
Any other comment?
Thanks, Director Rees.
That's it. Yeah. No other comments. I shall put that to the vote. Those in favour of the recommendations as read. Thank you. That is carried. Item 8.2.2. Again, Director of Assets, Mr. Rees, Alpine Planning Scheme Review 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report relates to the adoption and implementation of the Alpine Planning Scheme Review 2023. By way of background, the Planning Scheme Review is an overall health check of the Alpine Planning Scheme and focuses on the effectiveness and efficiency of the planning scheme, aligning the planning scheme with the ministerial direction on the form and the content of planning schemes, and ensuring that the planning scheme contains a clear narrative about the way in which the use and development of land will be managed to achieve the planning vision and objectives of the area. Council has undertaken a comprehensive review between 2010 and 2014, which was the last time this was done, and this was adopted as an Amendment 39 and was gazetted in June 2016. That was the last time a planning scheme review was done, and we're due for the next now. In terms of issues, some of the high-level findings have been the finding that the Alpine Planning Scheme contains many policy gaps and is not effectively guiding decision-making in the Alpine Shire. There are significant gaps, and the planning scheme is out of date. This is leading to inconsistent decision-making and lost opportunities for the most efficient use of our land, adaptation to climate change, and the protection of values such as landscapes and heritage for the benefit of the community. The statutory planning function of council is confronted with both legislative requirements and community expectations. The process to address the underlying issues that led to the situation to improve the performance of the planning function at council are underway, but they will take some time to see results. In the interim, the review states that it is critical that council remains focused on the strategic planning projects that will make the most difference to the wider community and to building the capacity and confidence of the statutory planning team. There are a wide range of amendments. I'll touch on a few of them for recommendation. The first is to incorporate the policy neutral changes identified in Chapter 5 in the attached ordinance with the ministerial direction on the form and content of the planning scheme, to include a range of new policy that has been developed since the previous review, and then a range of housekeeping matters to ensure that the planning scheme is updated. One such matter, as by example, is to include a new notice requirement at clause 66 to ensure plantation managers are notified of applications for subdivision of land or use of the land for accommodation within 300 metres of a timber plantation boundary. By way of context, there is no obligation for council to notify our neighbours, and so by including this, we're ensuring good neighbourly conduct. The review also has identified a range of further strategic work, again by example, finalising the land development strategy, preparing the rural land strategy stage 2, preparing structure plans for Popunka, Bright, Mount Beauty, Toowoomba South and Middleford, and so on and so on. All up, this additional recommended strategic work sets a pathway for the next 10 to 12 years of investment by council. There are also some advocacy recommendations, such as improving the processes associated with the collection and analysis of data, matters that council may wish to discuss with the Victorian Government, specifically who is responsible for preparing flood mapping for the Shire, and looking to engage a Dinner Plain advisor in a similar fashion to in what we would do with the Heritage Advisor.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Second, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rees, for your comprehensive summary. This is incredibly important work, and the question on notice, written in tonight picked up some important points. But I did want to mention the Rural Land Use Strategy and Economic Development Strategy and Sport and Active Recreation Plan as examples of strategic planning that we have done. They just haven't been built into the planning scheme yet. So it's not that we're not doing strategic planning, it's that it hasn't been put in place and the Minister ticked it off, which is what we're trying to do with this motion tonight. I also wanted to mention the recommendations for further work, and Mr. Rees touched on some of it, but some of the anomalies that we have, such as people trying to build in Mondilagon, and it's predominantly zoned farming, which makes it really hard to be able to build a house. So we need to do some strategic work around that and work out what the best way forward is for those who want to build and those who want to continue to live there. So that's the sort of thing that this work will point us in the direction of. But yes, it is an incredibly comprehensive list of things that needs to be done, and I think 10 years is probably, we'll probably be lucky if we get it done in 10 years.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. And look, Mr. Rees, building on some of Councillor Nicholas's points there, I do have a couple of questions. I sort of wonder whether this is more than a spring clean than some housekeeping in terms of a little bit more significant work has been done. There's a couple of key recommendations there around removal of development plan overlays, and one relates to a development on the edge of Bright, which the policy rationale there is around, well, the development's done, we don't need the overlay there anymore. The second one relates to a development, and I think it's a misspelling of Glenbourne Drive. It's typed in as Glenburn. It's probably the old autocorrect in action. Glenbourne Drive here in Toowoomba South, and the proposal to remove that one. I think the basis for it was that it doesn't contain any content, and I was just curious as to the the origin of that development plan overlay, and also what the implications are of removing that for future development in Toowoomba South there.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Yes, I think you're right, it is more of a spring clean. The origin of that development plan overlay I cannot speak to at this point. However, the implications of a development plan that is empty of content means that there is very little for planning officers to use when receiving development plans in due course. And so in order to reset the governance of that process, the recommendation is to remove the development plan overlay at this point in time. In due course, if the developer would like to go down that path, we can always consider a subsequent proposal, but having no content really makes it very difficult to assess any development plans that are submitted against any criteria.
Okay, and so in that end, we will expect at some point probably the owner or that land may be subject to a development plan overlay again in the future. Would we expect that?
It may happen. I cannot speculate on the developer's preferences, but again, as we spoke about last month, the use of a development plan overlay is a standard approach to enable developments to proceed with confidence for the investor, as well as by ensuring that there is a good level of detail and content within the development plan overlay, that the planning decisions can be assessed against a fair set of criteria such as neighbourhood character, etc.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. One last question. I do note, and it was discussed, the clarification around the commercial forestry management, and I guess prompting more proactive engagement there is the way I'll put it. There's also a line in there about supporting new timber plantations in appropriate locations. And I was keen to understand the policy rationale behind that particular insertion there around the natural resource management. I don't think it really calls out any other new agricultural or other activities.
I'll take that on notice, Councillor Kelly, and come back to you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from councillors? Councillor Janus?
I note, thanks Mr. Rees, that introduced public open space contribution subdivision to collect a 5% contribution for residential subdivision. Are we not doing that now?
Thank you, Councillor Janus. No, we do not have a requirement in our planning scheme for a 5% contribution, so every public open space requirement is an individual negotiation.
So that would be quite a bonus to council to have that extra money to provide extra services for our community, or then I take it, that we don't now have access to.
So public open space is typically land, and by virtue of area, we currently don't have any mechanism to compel a developer to provide that 5% contribution. So by introducing this, it formalises it and makes it very clear for all developers what the expectation is in terms of their contribution to the community.
So that would be a good thing for subdivisions and not losing more and more green space to housing, and have space for our families and community to enjoy a bit more greenery. Thanks.
Just before I put back to Councillor Nicholas, I had a couple of... Oh, sorry, you've got one? Go for it.
Probably the same one you're going to ask, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe.
There you go.
No, you go.
You're the mayor, you don't get to speak. My questions is regards to recommendation 2 and 3, forwards to the Alpine Planning Scheme to the Minister and seeks authorisation from the Minister of Planning. Just a time frame on when Council might expect the Minister to sign off and send back those documentations.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. This is a protracted process. Some matters are easier and more straight. Sorry, Councillor Keeble. Some matters are more straightforward to have incorporated, but it may take up to 18 months to get all of these incorporated and the planning scheme actually amended.
Yeah, no, thanks. It does take a long time to get things through the Minister's office, and if they have questions, it comes back and bounces around, so it doesn't surprise me. Thank you.
That was one of my questions. The other question, though, is when you mention the 5%, what is the size of a subdivision that would trigger the 5%? Is it 5 lots, 10 lots, 20 lots?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's five lots and over.
5 lots. All right, and if they can't supply the land, can we then accept a payment instead?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Councillor Nicholas, did you have anything more to add? Negative. Thank you. I will put the recommendations to the councillors. Those in favour of the recommendations as read. Thank you. That has been carried. Item 8.2.3, collaborative waste tender. Director of Assets, Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just scroll forward. So this report relates to the report that was put to council in February, and particularly relates to item 8.1.1, the collaborative waste tender at the February council meeting. At that time, it was identified that there was some risk with regards to finalising the actual value for the provision of services by through contract CQ 23006. Subsequent to that meeting, negotiations have been entered into and have been completed, and the result is that a quotation for the increased costs of the accelerated rollout as well as the delivery of the kitchen caddy liner bags has been negotiated with Cleanaway. The estimated cost in the February council report was noted as $416,792. The final negotiated cost is now $453,696, with which a total increase of $36,904. The breakdown of these costs are detailed in the financial and resources section of the report. This report is simply for council to note that those negotiations are now complete. The risk has been addressed, and it is recommended that the purchase order is approved under delegation to the CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble.
So noted.
So noted or moved?
Moved.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Councillor Keeble.
No, thanks very much. The question I have is, I'm happy with the change in the rollout, the speed of, is it a month, is it 2 months, do we know what the change in the speed of the rollout will be?
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. This is to achieve the target date of 1 July for the service to go live, which is the FOGO service as per our plans.
Thank you.
Councillor Janus.
Just noting the pop-ups. I'll just note that the pop-ups that we've had within the communities have been well attended, and lots of questions for staff and councillors attending that, and there's quite a keen interest in the rollout of the FOGO. So the better we've been promising this to the community for some years now since I've been on council, and finally we've got to that point. So we've got the figures done. We should be ready to go.
Thank you. Comments?
I
Councillor?
do indeed, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Councillor Kelly, thank you.
Look, just one question, Mr Rees. What's the implication if we don't? What happens on 1 July 23 if we don't accelerate the rollout of the hardware for this service?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Well, we wouldn't be able to provide the service, and we would then fall into the queue of other councils that were part of this procurement process, and it would simply result in a delayed implementation, which could take a matter of months.
So we wouldn't find ourselves in the position we're paying for the service from 1 July, despite the hardware not being available.
No, it's not possible to deliver the service without the hardware.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No? I have one question, and it's basically relating to the fact that we are faced with this increase of $36,000. And it's lovely in hindsight, I'll have to say that first, was it not scoped correctly in the first instance, or was the contract not let early enough?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It was identified all along that we had a challenging timeline to meet, and that there may be a need to pay a small premium to expedite the delivery within our committed timeline. And what that meant was, in order to get that done, a small premium was paid for each mobile garbage bin. I think this is really just a completion of the process through the final negotiations around the timelines.
Right, so it brings the question that if those had been completed, the original recommendation that came to council previously would have been at 453, not at the 416. Is that correct?
That is correct. The collaborative procurement process took significantly longer to complete than what we'd originally anticipated, and that then put the delivery time schedule under pressure.
Thank you. I just could be cynical about why it took so long, but I won't be. Fine. Any other comments? Councillor Keeble? No? I'll put this recommendation to the vote then. Those in favour, please. Thank you. That is carried. Item 8.2.4, airport service leases for aircraft hangars at Paul Punker Aerodrome. Director of Assets, Mr Alan Rees.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report relates to 2 new leases at the Paul Punker Aerodrome on Site 9 and Site 12, which are contained on Lot 1 of the Plan of Subdivision on Buckland Valley Road at the Paul Punker Aerodrome. Just by way of background, there's been a master plan that has been created and presented to council. It was approved in June 2006. The process involves a lease document to be developed. The length of these leases is 10 years plus an option to extend for a further 10 years. The cost for each of these leases is $1,224 per annum, and those are then adjusted by CPI each year. It's in line with our policy in terms of the financials. The CPI increase is applied annually, and it is recommended that these 2 leases are approved by council.
Thank you, Mover. Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Kelly.
Mr Rees, thanks for the report, and it's great to see this airport getting good support and interest and utilisation, and the fact that the lease amount goes to the community of management there to maintain the asset. One question I have is, when a lessee enters this agreement, Do they have the right to enter into subleases to allow others to use their hangar, or what is the flow on commercial arrangements, you know?
I'm not clear, I'll have to come back to you on that, Councillor Kelly, but typically a lease is for sole access,
Right.
whereas a license is not exclusive. So my interpretation would be this is for sole access, but I'll come back to you to confirm.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Nicholas? Nothing? Any other comments by any councillors on this? Yep, Councillor Keeble.
I'll just say for the record, having been around there in 2007, 2008 decisions, it's good to see that the airfield is still getting used with the change of the way the road went in, so there could be more lots. So it's great to see that it's safer and being used.
I believe council has spent a bit of money there tidying up concrete pans and what have you, so it's good. All right, I shall put this to the vote. Those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you, that's carried. Right, items 8.3, Director of Customer and Community, Ms Helen Havercroft. We have 8.3.1, which are instruments of delegation. This is the housekeeping stuff for tonight. And item 8.3.2, which is instruments of appointment and authorisation. Would councillors like to do these separately, or would you like to do them together? Basically housekeeping lots, but however, I'll be guided by you.
Do them all? Yeah, let's do them all.
Do them all? All right, so 8.3.1 and 8.3.2, I will allow Ms Havercroft to speak to them, but they're basically housekeeping.
And 3.
No, 8.3.3 is not in it.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the first report, instrument of delegation, is a refresh of our delegations from Council to the Chief Executive Officer. And it's just a piece of general housekeeping, as you suggested. Sections 6 and sections 18 are instruments. They were most recently updated in December 2022 and came into operation at the point of our restructure on the 9th of January 2023. There's only very minor changes to, I think it's Schedule 6 actually, sorry I said section, Schedule 6, as relating to staff changes and their titles changing as well. So the recommendation this evening is that Council exercise its power to confer all of the sections. As you can see, there's quite a few recommendations and I don't intend to read them all out.
So moved. Councillor Nicholas, thank you. And I have a seconder, Councillor Kelly, thank you. Councillor Nicholas.
Yep. This is housekeeping, but it's also really critical in that it is the way we instruct our officers what they are allowed to make decisions about without council getting involved. So even though we've bulked them all together, they're important pieces of legislation that we're following. And I support what we've put forward.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one question, Ms Havercroft. In terms of the drafting and preparation of these items, I know we have a law firm subscription service that helps keep us on top of any sort of reg changes that need to be reflected, but also personnel changes. Do we rely on their QA process in terms of identification of all the roles and the personnel, or is there also an internal QA process on that?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. So annually, the law firm produces a series of templates for the delegate, for the large spreadsheets and the types of acts that need to be covered. Right. But the work is being done internally to make sure that the names match the titles, that match the paperwork. So when staff leave and staff join, or council decide to delegate additional or remove some powers from the chief executive, that's all reflected by us internally in the documentation.
So quite a lot of in-house considerable work done to keep these current and accurate.
It keeps the governance officer busy.
Any other comments from councillor? No? Councillor Janus, you're right?
Yeah, good.
Excellent.
At the moment.
Okay, at the moment. I just note for the purposes that the risk management on this particular housekeeping stuff is the impact could be, the likelihood is possible and the impact could be moderate, only because if we don't have authorised delegates, they can't actually do their function. So therefore you can't have things signed off in a timely manner. So that's the reason we're doing it. So I now will put 8.3.1, instruments of delegation, those 3 recommendations with all of the sub recommendations, and item 8.3.2, instruments of appointment and authorisation, which we have 4 recommendations there as well. I shall put those to the councillors. Those in favour? Thank you. That has been carried. Moving on to 8.3.3, Audit Risk Committee meeting minutes. Thank you, Ms Havercroft.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting that took place on the 24th of February 2023. The most important thing to note from the perspective of councillors this evening is that they are as yet unconfirmed minutes. The next Audit and Risk Committee meeting is on the 26th of May when they will be approved or otherwise. So the principal part of the conversation at the Audit and Risk Committee related to the Local Government Inspectorate report and the review of our council policies. The committee received a report on the Victorian Local Government Inspectorate report, checking compliance, a review of local government policies. This review measured the success of each of the 79 Victorian councils in meeting the requirements of the Local Government Act 2020 to develop and adopt a suite of new policies. The committee noted that council is compliant with the Act requirements and acknowledged that council's policy format was presented in the review as an example of good practice. The specific part that they pulled out, if you look at our policies, related to the version control that we have, that we keep that regularly updated rather than creating a new one each time, and that's been rolled out as part of their recommendation for good practice. So the recommendation this evening is that council receives and notes the unconfirmed minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting on the 24th of February 2023.
Move a seconder. Councillor Janus. Councillor Kelly. Councillor Janus.
I'll just take it as read. I note that they are unconfirmed minutes at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly. Nothing further. Any other comments from councillors? No. Thank you. To the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Item 8.3.4, community budget submissions. Again, Ms Havercroft, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So in a change from last year, we took a very early getting out to the community approach to our community budget. For those that are interested in the budgeting process each year, we usually, or have historically, gone out after this evening and a draft budget is adopted. We then go out for public exhibition for 28 days and invite submissions, and there'll be hearings so that councillors can hear from the community. That process will remain exactly the same, but in addition to that, this year we sought community budget submissions through a series of pop-ups at each of the markets in the towns over December and January, and we received 41 submissions at that through the Smarty Grants process. And as a comparison, in the last year we received 21. So we are fairly confident that we reached a lot of additional people this year at this early stage and a really over a long time period. It was open for about 10 weeks, the Smarty Grants, and we had a member of staff internally supporting people in completion of the Smarty Grants application process if they hadn't done it before. And if anyone came as one of the submitters to present to council, they will know that there was a military regime of 15 minutes to present to the councillors. It was an extremely long couple of days actually. We heard from 35 of the 41 submitters, and apart from being exhausting, it was fantastic to hear from so many people about their passion projects that they are so interested in. So the report before us this evening is to note that there was 41 submissions, and then to set out how they have been processed and reviewed as part of the budget documentation which follows this evening in another report. So there was 4 of the submitters' projects that had a value attached to them that is included in the draft budget which is being presented to Council this evening. And then the next stage is ones that are happening in the 23-24 period or beyond already. They're already factored into our work, but they don't have a financial sum allocated to them. So whilst the submitter placed a value against them, that sum is not, you couldn't find it in the budget. We haven't identified it as a capital project that's identifiable, but it is work that will be progressing. And then the last group of submitters aren't being progressed in 2023-24, and a proposed response has been identified against each of them of what we will ask them to do next, or where it will go next. So the last recommendation this evening is that we will write to each of the submitters to provide them with an update of the outcome from this evening's council meeting, and to suggest what they may be able to do with that application next. For example, if it is on a piece of DECA land, that they would contact DECA and to support them in that process. So that's the recommendation this evening, is that councils consider the written and verbal submissions received on the community budget process and includes the following submissions as part of the Alpine Council draft budget, which is Pebble Beach Public Toilet, the Bright Skate Park upgrade, Cobden Street upgrade, the Big Hill Trailhead power upgrade. And then note the following submissions are either currently being progressed or will be progressed in 2023 financial year without the allocation of a specific budget amount. And I'm not intending to read them all out.
No.
And then recommendation 4, note the following submissions do not result in funding in the Alpine Shire draft budget and are not being progressed by council in the 23-24 financial year. And the final recommendation notifies in writing each person or persons who made a community budget submission of the outcome of their submission this evening.
Thank you. Mover and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Keeble. Councillor Nicholas.
To start by thanking all the people who put together a budget submission and came and spoke to us, or who just put together a submission and sent it to us. I think it's been a terrific process, and I also want to thank our executive and staff who put it forward as an idea. Capturing so many things that are important to our community has been really special, particularly in that second table that we haven't got a swag of money next to it, but it's work that we're building into our work program. I think it's really good, and also commend the full engagement process that the proponents, people who put forward their ideas, get feedback about what's happening with their ideas. And also I'm looking forward to seeing some the ideas that are going in the budget to fruition. Thank you.
Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor Forsyth. While we've had public submissions on the budget in the years gone past, this one was much earlier in the process and has allowed for more input from community members, and you know, all the projects there are all really important, and you know, there's actions for all of them. Some will be in the pipeline, some will go to different plans that are in the community so that they won't be missed, and you know, we'd love to do all of them at some stage, but bit by bit, there we go.
Any other councillors like to make comments?
Yes, thanks.
Councillor Janus.
I've got a comment. I really do have to comment that the Lower Ovens area are not in list 1 at all. I think there will be a number of submitters down that end of town that might be a little bit disappointed. However, I was present for, I think, nearly all of the submissions, but some of those are on not council property, council land. One bit that, being at the Mount Beauty Airport, for a meeting today, which was interesting. I note that from the conversation we had there, and Mr Jeremy might be able to confirm that there is going to be a tractor go down there. Mr Jeremy, is that right? Should that be up in the list number 1 in the submissions, list 1?
Well, thank you, Councillor Janice. So, the second list in the report, about halfway down page 58, it says Council to make available its redundant tractor for use at the Mount Beauty Airport. So we haven't put it in list 1 because there's no specific budget that you would find within our budget reports, but there is support. As there is for everything else within this list, there is support being provided by Council.
Right. Okay, and I know there's something that's dear to everyone's heart here, is the improved management of weeds across the Shire. And we're going to be looking at explore options to deliver an upgrade to our weed guide, which I think is very important for our environment. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholas, any further comment? No? Oh, Councillor Kelly, would you like? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, there's been some commentary across the, I guess, the spectrum here of this particular item on the agenda, and I think when I crunch the numbers, you know, we've had 41 submissions, 4 explicitly successful, 14 are looking to be accommodated or adopted in some fashion. I think we, you know, this is a new process in the approach that we've taken in early engagement, and what I'd like to see going forward, to be honest, is some kind of target percentage of our capital works or projects value that is set aside for what our community put forward through the submissions process. You know, when I crunch the numbers here and I look at the later agenda item on our draft budget, round numbers, there's sort of $6 million of council's own capital money. I think there's another 6 million from grants and things, but we've got 6 million of our own capital flagged for FY24. And when I look at the projects committed, you know, that you know, they're sort of 2.5% of that amount, and I can understand why this turn of the wheel, those numbers might be that, but I think you know, if we're going to ask the community to make submissions and go through this process, I think in our next FY25, I'd like to see a target percentage of our capital that's allocated, looking to accommodate submissions or ideas brought forward. Some of them aren't new ideas, but some are evolved. And I guess my last comment would be that you know, if you were one of the organisations or individuals that put in a submission and you're uncomfortable with the report in these council papers, you do get a second attempt. You know, the budget will go out for comment, and you know, the one that sits out for me, with one of my colleagues has mentioned the lower ovens. I also think the upper ovens. There's a place of last resort there with a pretty mature project for the Harrietfield Hall upgrade. That would be another one that I'd be looking to have another shot at this for prioritisation. Thank you.
Thank you. Just on that point that you make there, you have another crack at it through when the draft budget comes out. There are other ways in which to get funding for various things, and one of them is community grants, which will be coming up soon. Failing that, there is also our very, very benevolent community bank, and in places like Myrtleford, they have a thing called Grow Myrtleford Plus, which is a place-based foundation which people can donate to, and that money is then spent back into the community. I don't believe Mount Beauty and Toowoomba have anything like that as yet, but it could be something to possibly look at. It's auspiced into our hands. So there are other options for getting some of this stuff if it doesn't fit within council's budgetary requirements at the time. Having said that, I'll go back to Councillor Nicholas and see if there's anything else you'd like to say before we put this to the vote.
No, I'm good.
No, you're good? All right. Putting to vote those in favour of the recommendations as read, as written. Thank you, we have agreement. 8.3.5, Dinner Plain Special Rates, 23-24, public notice of proposed declaration. Thank you, Ms Abercroft.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this report is to recommend that public notice be given of a proposed declaration of a special rate for the Dinner Plain Village, applicable only to the commercial and industrial land for the next financial year. Again, there is an enormously long list of recommendations attached to this, but in essence, the recommendation and the information here is that we apply a 43% special rate on top of the general rate that applies to all residents in Dinner Plain, to create a Dinner Plain special rate for the commercial and industrial properties that reside in Dinner Plain.
Thank you. Do we need further comments? Councillors understand this? Somebody like to put it to... Yes, thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Janus. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just make a call out to those properties impacted by this proposed decision to make a written submission per the recommendation. You know, there is now a consultation process.
Councillor Janus.
No, I have nothing further. Only to say that the rate set is same as down here. It's just a special rate.
As
It's
opposed
called
to
a special rate.
Yeah.
Forward all the money to be spent up there, so that's fine. Happy with that. Not
Thank you.
paying any more than anyone else.
Any other commentary? No? Can we put that one to the vote, these recommendations, please? Those in favour? Thank you, that's carried. Item 8.3.6, the draft 23-24 budget report. Thank you, Ms Abercroft.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this report is for Council to receive the draft budget of 23-24 for the Alpine Shire Council. The draft budget is one of the attachments to the document and includes all of our formal budget requirements and also a schedule of our proposed fees and charges. So Council has prepared the draft budget. It's aligned with our community vision and the Alpine Shire Council Plan 21 to 25. The draft budget has at the moment a surplus of $4.33 million, which is influenced by some key components. A rate increase of 3.5% in line with the Fair Go rate system, which caps Victorian Council rate increases in line with inflation. Capital Works expenditure totalling $12.6 million. A significant capital works programme reflecting a steady pipeline of asset renewal and increased development activity from successful grant applications totalling $6.6 million. An increased material and services budget reflecting inflationary impact on costs and the cost of the new FOGO curbside waste service, which was discussed a little bit earlier. And lastly, a modest increase in staff numbers resulting from the organisational restructure that was implemented on the 9th of January 2023. In addition, a review of Council's fees and charges has been conducted. Fees have been increased in line with the movement in the actual cost to provide some of the services, or there's been a 3.5% increase rounded to a 0 or a 5 to make the numbers look a little bit more sensible. And there is a couple of new service fees proposed in the schedule. Further details of the operating result, strategic objectives, the services that are delivered, our cash position, our investments, capital works, financial sustainability, rates, charges and fees can all be viewed in the attachment. It goes into a significant amount of detail. I've read it lots of times, so I'd recommend have a read. It's got a lot of detail, but maybe here are some highlights. So as part of the draft budget, Council plans to deliver another significant capital expenditure programme totalling $12.6 million. That is quite significantly smaller than last year. Last year it was over $18 million and we heralded a bumper crop of grant funding. We are taking a more pragmatic approach to the capital works programme and really looking in a lot of detail, looking to the Director of Assets, at a lot of detail at what can really be delivered. We know there's inflationary pressures out there on the cost of contractors and contract construction work. and we were mindful of how quickly 12 months goes when you're trying to deliver big projects. So some of those projects and some of the grant funding will support our Dinner Plain activation, Dinner Plain snowmaking, a Myrtleford splash park, the Myrtleford Savoy Soccer Club upgrade, Nemo pedestrian bridge, Ablett Park upgrade, pavilion upgrade, pardon me, the Myrtleford Memorial Hall works, Tawonga Memorial Hall upgrade, the Trono Dredge Hole precinct design, East Ovens pedestrian bridge. The list goes on, I just have no more bullets here. We're further supporting Council's commitment to climate change mitigation and the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. A number of key projects will be delivered to improve the efficiency and environmental impacts of Council's infrastructure. These vital projects include energy efficient projects, vehicle renewal, including EV upgrades, Mount Beauty landfill rehabilitation design, and the rollout of the curbside collection service for food organics, green organics, FOGO. So, as mentioned earlier, there's been considerable consultation through the community budget process relating to what people would like to see included in the budget. And this evening, if adopted, this kicks off the next phase of consultation. So the draft budget will go on to public exhibition for 28 days. You'll see adverts in the newspaper. If you wish to make a submission, you may, and there'll be another hearing session, or however many submissions we get, maybe a couple of hearing sessions with the councillors before the final budget is adopted on the 27th of June. So the recommendation this evening is that council, I will read all of these out because there's lots of different elements that are important, that council prepares the draft Alpine budget annexed to this resolution featuring a 3.5% rate increase, and they authorise the Chief Executive Officer to give public notice of the preparation of the budget in accordance with Council's community engagement policy, make available for public inspection the information required in accordance with the local government regulations, invite written submissions from the public on any proposal contained in the budget, with submissions closing at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Noting that any submitter may request to be heard in person in support of their submission, forms a committee if required consisting of councillors for the purposes of hearing those submissions, and finally considers a recommendation to adopt the budget at an ordinary council meeting on the 27th of June 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Keeble. Councillor Nicholas.
This is a process that council doesn't take lightly, and I have some questions I'd like to ask Ms Havercroft, in particular about the rate increase of 3.5% and how, if we didn't raise the rate to that amount, how that would affect us into the future, and what rate capping does to our capacity to generate revenue through rates.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. I might start talking about massive pies.
Yeah.
Because the language is quite complicated around compounding. If we don't take the 3.5% rate, which is being capped by the state government, the impacts aren't just in 23-24. They progress into every year subsequently. So we have our pocket of rates, which is determined by the number of residents and the number of dwellings that we have, and we're constrained by what we can add to that pot, and it can only grow in its totality together. So if we don't take the 3.5% and we take a different amount, that 3.5% is lost forever. It's not just 1 year and then we add it up. It's the 3.5% plus what 3.5% plus whatever we might receive next year grows and grows, and that's, you never get it back. And we know that we're facing really high inflationary pressures. People have got really high cost of living pressures, and this might feel like another cost on top, but it's shared amongst all of the residents, and it goes towards funding all of the services that council want to continue to deliver into the future, and so we need to collect the money now, in essence, to make that pot grow for the future. And quite a lot of the money that we hold is already earmarked as cash-backed something, so we need to be able to pay our bills and sustain the services that we've already got underway and any new services that we might want to deliver into the future.
Thank you, Ms Havercroft. I have another question about our financial hardship policy and how that might apply if the cost of living pressures across the Shire are such that people need some help.
So if anyone is struggling, thank you, Councillor Nicholas, if anyone is struggling to pay their rates, we would really urge them to get in touch with us early and to have a conversation with our rates officer relating to that. They're confidential, they're not being discussed in the office, no one has any idea who is making these requests for financial hardship claims. They'll be considered confidentially and sympathetically. So that's what happens at the moment. We are aware that Bargo have been doing a very deep review of how hardship should be dealt with, particularly around what interest charges are placed on individuals by council when they're in debt. We don't have the outcome of that review yet that was undertaken in 2021, but we kind of have an anticipation of what it is going to ask all councils to do, which isn't a long way off what we're already doing, which is treating people as individuals and taking care that we don't place them into hardship. But we await the outcome of that review and we'll take whatever necessary steps we're required to do.
Thank you. I have one more question, because I get asked quite regularly in our community about the surplus. 4.33 million sounds like a lot of money as a surplus, and I wonder if you could outline what that money is actually reserved for. I understand there's reserves and liabilities and all sorts of stuff. It's not actually money that we can just do whatever we want with.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. I think maybe you yourself in a briefing session at some point said it's an economic surplus rather than an actual surplus in what people might expect. So quite a lot of it is in the accountancy world. One large example is we receive federal assistance grants each year. They are about $4.5 million, and they have no stipulation on how they can be spent apart from for the community and our ratepayers. So they have to immediately be treated as income in our accounts, and the state give their money to us at some point in the year and in whichever amount they wish. So we know exactly how much it will be over the whole year, but we don't know when we will receive it. And so, for example, last year we received 75% of it early, which made our surplus look absolutely huge, but it wasn't money that we were able to spend until the following financial year, which confuses the accounts and it makes the number look very large. This year we're accounting for all of that income up front, so that's making the surplus larger than it is. We're anticipating all of that money coming this year, but they might decide they're only going to give us 25% of it, and then it will come out and yes, it's hard to explain. But the other things involve the cost of delivering our services. So we have made a really good effort, and we did a very detailed analysis of all of the costs and the incomes that we're expecting in our budget, and that's where it comes out. But there is uncertainty in every budget, and we do our quarterly forecasting to refine that throughout the year. And next month or the month after, the Q3 report will come to us, and there'll be some really good examples in there where we receive grants that we weren't expecting, or we don't receive grants that we were expecting, and that will really change what the surplus looks like at the end of any year. We also have to have some cash-backed liabilities. So, for example, we need to be able to ensure that we can pay the annual leave and the long service leave that our staff are due, so we hold that as a liability and it sits there. We need to be able to renew over time $250 million worth of assets that the community have that are looked after by the council, and if we want any new assets, they will then need to be maintained and operated into the future. And they're things that you'd love to have a crystal ball and it would have all of the answers. So building up a really safe nest egg in a surplus each year and growing it a little bit provides that certainty that you're going to have long-term financial sustainability. And they're just some of the things that we're doing to secure that.
Thank you, Ms Havercroft. It's all from me, except just to point out, item 3 in the recommendation that their written submissions from the public will be received till the 31st of May.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor Forsyth. So the rate increase of 3.5 is the largest one for a while under the rate capping regime, given the cost of living and all that sort of stuff that everyone is very familiar with. And it's already been raised. If you are having financial hardship, to please contact Council. They're willing and able to look at that in regards to payment plans and whatnot. So if you're listening or here or know people, please let them know that. And as Councillor Nicholas pointed out, the draft budget will allow community people to have a say. And I would say in regards to the previous recommendation earlier from Councillor Kelly and Councillor Janus said there may be some of those projects that maybe some of the other community members
Can I just have a point of clarity there? If you read item 3, written submissions from the public on any proposal contained in the draft budget. So those items that are not in the budget, Council will not accept
Noted.
submissions on.
Noted. This is a different that's the different process.
Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. So make sure you have your say on that when it comes out. That's all I will say.
Any other councillors like to comment on this draft budget report? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. The economist in me wants to point out a couple of things. In the report, we say under issues in point A, the rate cap is based on inflation. 3.5% is really half the current inflation rate. Councillor Keeble is right. Our rate cap was 1.75% last year, so it's a doubling on that. And indeed, it's the biggest number for some time. It's a number determined by the Minister on advice from the Essential Services Commission. And, I don't know what the policy intent was. I hate to speculate, but they're seeing what the policy outcome is now, as I think this is our 7th year of rate caps, actually possibly more. Just my last comment on this is that, FY24, there's a couple of things that ring out for me when I think about our budget and our priorities. Firstly is the capital works delivery, and I would encourage people to look at 5.4 in the draft budget, what the capital works are. Are they the right ones? And also the other FY24 more operational commitment was around the preparation of a short-term accommodation bylaw to manage short-term accommodation in our shire and adequately funding that initiative or prioritising that initiative. I know we were unable to do it in FY23. I expect to see it in FY24. Thank you.
Good. Any other comments by councillors? Councillor Nicholas, any final comment?
Yeah, I have one more final comment.
Right, certainly.
I'm not going to explain how rating works with property value, but a 3.5% rate increase doesn't mean your rates are going to change by 3.5%. I'll leave it there. But Alpine Shire will be doing a rating and revenue plan 2, which we have to do by legislation, and so we'll be reviewing that, and there will be opportunity then to gain understanding about how rating works through the community for people who want to know. That's it.
Thank you very much. I shall put this recommendation to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. That is carried.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, certainly.
may I make a point of clarification from an earlier report where I made an answer,
Certainly.
8.2.2, so it's actually one of the Director of Assets reports.
8.2.2.
It related to 5% developer contributions.
Yes.
And I said it was 5 lots or more. It's not. It's about any subsequent subdivision of land.
Thank you.
So it could be on any
Thanks for the
source.
clarity. And my other point was that we can accept it in cash if they haven't got the land. Is that is still correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, we have an office, don't we? Very good. I'd like to see council working. Right, we're up to number 9. Informal meetings of councillors. The recommendation is that a summary. So moved. Councillor Nicholas. Seconded. Councillor Keeble. Councillor Nicholas, anything?
Nope.
Councillor Keeble? No. Those in favour? Sorry, anybody against that? No. Those in favour? Thank you, that's been carried. Item 10, presentation of reports by delegates. Anybody have any reports to do tonight? No? General business, starting from Councillor Kelly. Thank you.
One item of general business, Mayor. The Mount Beauty CFA will be celebrating their 75th year since their establishment. This calendar year, a significant milestone, and I was minded earlier to Councillor Nicholas's comments about Tony's Trek, and you know, the fact that people who volunteer or are paid in our emergency services don't just put their physical health on the line at times, they also put their mental health and well-being on the line as well. So a preemptive congratulations to the Mount Beauty CFA, and I look forward to some celebrations there this year as a terrific milestone for the community here in Mount Beauty.
Excellent.
Nothing from me tonight.
Okay, certainly. Councillor Keeble.
It's not too late. I was reading some interesting articles today around the housing stocks, and I know in our shire we had Ashford Avenue today, and we've got some other things going on in the background as well. But there's some interesting discussions around housing stocks in Australia, and that at some stage, well, they were talking about councils making decisions on subdivisions and housing stocks and density, and whether that should or should not be in the hands of councils, whether that should be state or state governments. There were interesting discussions given some of the decisions we're looking at in the future, and that basically the article was looking at, well, do you want to keep cutting up farming land for housing stock, or do we have other, conversations about housing densities? I'm not saying in, hard townships, but there will be some discussions, I think, in the future around about housing stocks and densities in all communities. Anyway, it was an interesting article based on some of the things we're looking at. So I just wanted to raise
We'd
that.
like to read the article. Thank you. Councillor Janus.
No, not tonight, thanks.
Okay. CEO, Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a couple of quick points. The first is I'd like to thank the members of the community who've been engaging with us through the pop-ups that we've been holding at the markets recently. So these have had a specific focus on the implementation of a FOGO surface. It's been really good to have engagement with the community, to see some questions. I think people have been quite surprised by the range of different materials that they'll be able to put in the new FOGO bin. Mount Beauty's turn in the Upper Kiewa Valley is in 2 weeks' time, or just short of 2 weeks, 6th of May, we'll be here in the markets here. So if you've got some questions, if you want to learn about FOGO, come on down and have a chat to us. I'd like to thank the community, so echo the comments, the community who've taken the time to put in community budget submissions. That's really appreciated, and I do recognise how much time it takes to put those submissions together. So as the councillors have noted, this is our first year of the new process. We're going to learn from this process, and we'll be able to improve it into the future. The other thing I'd like to shout out is to my staff who have worked on the budget. So this is a really significant piece of work in our calendar. We started working on this in November last year, if you can believe that. So we could work on the budget all the way through from November to the 30th or the end of June when the budget gets adopted. It's a really big piece of work. This year it's been even bigger because we've restructured the organisation, so we've had to work out what each of the different teams are doing and how they feed into that budget process. So I'd like to thank my staff and recognise the effort they've put in to get us to this point.
Thank you. Well said. I have no general business tonight, so item 12, motions for which notice has previously been given. We have none tonight. We have no reception and reading of petitions. Item 14, documents for sealing. On my running sheet, I have 5 items. Is this correct, or we only have 4? Ms. Habercroft? That one is not supposed to be there, is that correct? Item 1?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, item 1 will be removed from the minutes because we have already signed it.
Thank you.
Under the new process for signing section 173.
Right, so we have numbers 2, 3, 4 and 5. Item documents for sealing, could I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Kelly, thank you. Those in favour? It's carried. As the CEO just mentioned, I just had a reminder for the FOGO pop-up on Saturday week in Mount Beauty at the market. So thank you, see you there. And having said that, I'll now declare the meeting closed at 6:57, and thank you very much for attending. It's been a good night.
Wednesday must be a bit busier in Mount Beauty because usually it's Tuesdays and there's 30 people here. So.
No, it's because we didn't see it, don't we?
Beth,